Hello everybody, welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I like to share all the sort of yarn and fiber crafts that I've been working on. My name's Stephanie, I live on the west coast of Canada, on Vancouver Island, and I started kind of getting more seriously into knitting the last few years, due to COVID obviously, and having a little bit of schooling to finish there. My name on YouTube and Ravelry is Fluff and Yarn Stuffs. I don't actually use Ravelry very often because I just don't get around to it. I use Instagram sometimes, but generally I just forget to take pictures of what I'm working on. So I've actually finished a few little items here and there. I've been really busy recently. I got 2 new jobs, so that's been a little bit hectic learning all those new things, made some new friends, and have been spending a bunch more time outside. So I haven't been knitting as often as I was previously, but that's life. Anyway, I figured I would get into all of it and show you guys some of the stuff that I've been working on, now that I have a little bit of an afternoon to do that. So let's get started. The first thing I did recently was redid my keychain on my keys. I've got this cow tag. I used to work on some farms, and this was one of my favorite cows. Her name was, she didn't really have a name, we just called her 95, and she was really sweet, but she was old, and as dairy farms go, you know, they reached their end of their lifespan. She was a really sweet cow though. I did like her, so she's on my keys. But I've made this little macrame keychain. Not sure if it'll focus. Probably won't. That's okay. I always had little macrame keychains so that I can find my keys a little bit easier, but I had to make a new one, and this one actually fits around my wrist, so I can actually carry my keys a little bit easier. That's alright. That was the first little thing I did. I've done a fair amount of little mending items recently. I did finish the mending, I guess, on this toque that my mom gave me. It was from like Nepal or something. We got it from a little market, and I finished that. I don't have it with me. I keep it at work for when it's cold and we go on walks with all of my occupational rehab people. So that's not here, but I'll post a picture hopefully of it. The mend is actually quite seamless. I think I did a pretty good job. I just kind of duplicate stitched over where the yarn was getting really thin in one spot, and I sometimes struggle to find where this spot was. So that was really satisfying to have that done because I was starting to not wear it due to the wear. But yeah, so that one's done. The next thing I did with actually the same yarn was I've got this pair of slippers. Everybody makes themselves little slippers, right? So I had this little matching set. I've got kind of an offset rib on the top of it. They've been felted in the dryer a little bit just to try and fit down to my size. I wore these so much at my last place. Not that it was cold or anything, but I just really wanted to keep my feet warm. I have what's called Raynaud's in my feet. Some people get it in their hands. It's a circulatory issue, and so if your hands or feet or whatever get too cold, you can actually lose a bit of circulation and the end of your digit will go white. So I get that in my toes. I like to keep my toes a little bit warmer if I can to prevent that because it's quite uncomfortable. I haven't worn my slippers anyway. There's a massive patch, I guess, in the bottom. I should have done a bigger patch, but that's what we have. The other one's not really wearing out, so I didn't bother anything, but I think I might duplicate stitch a bunch of the bottom on both of these later, just to make them more durable, because I'm sure if I wear them a bunch more, they're gonna wear out a fair amount. This is just using a bunch of old wool that I got from this one lady who was having an estate sale. I think I have some of it actually over here. It might have been this wool or another wool. It's this Cara wool. It's super old. Either that or it was Simpson Sears. This is like lot number 126. The tape on it is like so old that it's yellow. I had like almost a couple hundred balls, I think, of this that I got at an estate sale, and I've been slowly working my way through. So at some point I made a bunch of pairs of slippers for myself and my friends, and I kept one pair for myself, but obviously wore them too much, as it goes. And I love the fact that we can mend things like this and keep them going, because otherwise, you know, it's just wasteful. And I'm glad that we can fix all this kind of stuff. The next thing I made for myself actually was for myself. I'd made previously, I'm not sure if you've seen in my previous episodes, I made some headbands for one of my roommates and for one of my friends. And I had just enough yarn left to make another headband, so it's got little wider bits for the ears. It was super simple. I just used this, I don't know, lightweight alpaca that I'd had for years that I got in a discount bin. It was one little ball, didn't know anything else about it. And then I had some of this Barocco wool. It's just super wash. I got it when I was making a pair of Zelda mittens for my buddy Chad, and I've had a fair amount of use out of this because I've made a few projects, and I guess it lasts longer than I thought. There's 400 yards in this, and I didn't realize it would last so long. I got this one and a grey one, but I figured this would pair well with the black of the alpaca, and I think it actually works pretty well. It keeps my ears super, super cozy because I did a moss stitch over the ears, and then I just did ribbing for the forehead and the back because it's going to fit under my helmet. So if it fits under my helmet, it just keeps my ears nice and cozy, and it doesn't have to be super thick here because that's where obviously my helmet's sitting, and I don't want it to be too bulky. But I think I did this on 3mm needles. I made it in like a couple of days while I was going for walks, and it was so nice to have one that matches my friends. Not that we all hang out or anything, like together wearing our headbands, but I think that would be kind of cute. Maybe we should when Danica gets back from Boston or something like that. Either way, selfish knitting. I was very happy with myself for that. It's one of myself. I actually did finish this pair of socks that I had started back in December. These ones, actually, I'm not going to get to this, never mind, sorry. A couple more things. I ended this sweater actually. I haven't worn this sweater in years. My mom and I have matching ones. She unfortunately can't wear hers because she's a little bit allergic to wool, which kind of sucks. And I hadn't worn mine for a few years because the cuff had started to undo itself, and I didn't want it to get worse, and I just was procrastinating because there's always more things to knit. So you can definitely tell the difference between the sleeves. This one comes in nicely because it still has the elastic in the end, and this is the one that I fixed. I actually ended up using some of this superwash wool just as like a thread to fix this and a few more holes that were coming along the seams. And I'm not sure if you can see, but it's super bumpy. I had no idea what I was doing. There's still little bits hanging up, but at least it's not unraveling anymore. So that's good. And I can wear the sweater, and I've been wearing it to work all the time, and it's super, super warm. It's not 100% wool. We just got it at a work warehouse at some point, but I just thought it was really cute that we had matching sweaters, and I want to start wearing it again. So I was able to mend that. So I mended the socks, I mended this, I mended the toque, and I think that's all that I mended. I have more things I need to mend in the future, but that's another story. So the first object that I finished, back to these guys. These are the Cozy Autumn socks by This Handmade Life. I haven't blocked them because I don't bother blocking socks, but it's got this really, really nice pattern in it. These socks have a bit of a story because I actually started them when I was on a trip to Mexico in December, and you can get knitting needles on planes pretty much anywhere. Not get them, but you can carry them on. So I carried them from Canada to Mexico. I knitted with them in Mexico while I was there, but then on the flight back, their security is quite tight, and they wouldn't let me take my knitting needles on the plane, so I had to rip the needles out, and I should have just cut the cable, but I was upset, so I ripped it out, and I had to like hopelessly like pick these needles back into these stitches when I got back to Canada, which took me a really long time because I've never done that with lace, so that was an interesting thing. And then I decided for some weird reason that I was going to knit the second sock on double pointed needles. So one of them has been done on double pointed, and one of them has been done on like using magic loop. For the double pointed, I was using 2.25mm needles instead of just 2mm needles that I was using on the magic loop. And so of course you had to compensate and knit a little bit tighter to compensate for the fact that the needles are a little bit bigger. And I overcorrected, and now one of the socks is way smaller than the other one. So if I line the heels up, you can tell that it's like an inch longer. And I do have one foot that's longer than the other one, but it's not that dramatic. So we'll see how that goes. Haven't worn them yet, but that's okay. This was also like my first time doing top-down socks. It was my first time doing lace work. It was my first time doing a heel flap and gusset. And it was my first time mattress stitching, I think. Maybe I've done it before in the past. I totally butchered this toe. I was like, that's not a mattress stitch. That's just a humble jumble of random things. But this one I was very proud of. It's just a regular seam. So that was really good. There's a lot of good things about this pattern. It was so easy to read. It's a totally free pattern. I 100% recommend it. It was super easy to pick up the sides of the heel flap, which I've always been terrified of, which is why I've always done German short row heels. Sometimes the cat sweet tomato heel, because it's like half of the short row heel and then half again, and it makes it really rounded. I like that one. But I'd never done the heel flap and gusset. And I think having these little garter bumps along the edge of the heel flap was such a smart idea, especially for somebody who's just learning, because it makes it super, super easy to pick up the stitches. It makes it super, super easy to count how far along you're doing. And I found that really, really helpful. I think the pattern calls for a slip stitch heel, and I tried to do the eye of partridge, but you can barely tell that it's eye of partridge. That's okay. It doesn't matter. It's a sock. It's reinforced. It'll get used. Somebody will love it. I'm not sure if that'll be me or somebody else, but for all that. I didn't really do any other modifications other than, I think the length, I made it a little tiny bit shorter, and I did twisted rib for the top instead of regular ribbing, and I didn't realize until I was done the socks that I'd actually done 1x1 ribbing on one of the socks and 2x2 ribbing on the other one. So I guess that'll be an easy way to tell if you wear one on the left and one on the right all the time. Either way. And the best part about this one was that I actually only used 50 grams of wool for both pairs. So I still had half of a ball of each type left, which I'm using to make some more socks, which I'm very happy about. It's just a stroll tweed fingering weight. It's got a bunch of, it's probably not going to focus, but that's okay. It's a Knit Picks yarn. It's apparently knitting needles number 1 to 3 get 7 to 8 stitches per inch, if that matters to you. I got it when I was buying a pair of knitting needles off of somebody on Facebook Marketplace, and they had 2 balls of this yarn with it, and I've really enjoyed working with it. It's a superwash, but I don't think that really matters to me right now, because it's just yarn that's in my stash that needs to get used, and somebody will wear them, which I think is great. It's called Barley Heather, if that makes a difference to anybody. So that brings us to the end of the things that I've finished making, and then we'll get started on stuff that I'm making now. There's part of this I will share later, but I'm making the pinky socks by I wrote it down, Trude Hertaas. I will link it in the description. It's just a free sock pattern. It was supposed to be an ankle sock, but I decided to make it a little bit taller because I have the extra yarn for it. And it's just really, really cute little pattern. Maybe I'll show you the back side. It's a little bit lacy, but not quite. And then it's got these cable. And then I decided, because I was going to do a cuff, I would add 3 cables instead of just 1. And I alternated where they were crossing. And of course I did a twisted rib instead of a regular rib for the cuff. And that's the only change that I've made. And then I'm doing the slip stitch heel like you're supposed to this time. And that actually showed up really well, unlike my last one. And I'm knitting these on the 9-inch circular sock needles that I'll talk about later, which has been really, really, really fun. I'm afraid that I'm going to get second sock syndrome because I've never knit socks one at a time before. Even when I was doing the Cozy Autumn socks, I had the 2 needles going, but I was knitting both socks at the same time. So this is my very first time doing one at a time, first time doing the slip stitch heel, and it's going super, super well. So this is my current walking project for when I'm walking with friends or dogs or something that are well behaved, and I don't really need to pay attention to that kind of stuff. I'm not sure if you guys knit and walk, but I think it's really, really fun. You still get like the outside time and the scenery, but you can still be like a little bit productive and pretend that you're enjoying yourself. I'm definitely enjoying myself, but you know, maybe I should spend more time actually looking at the trees. I'm still not quite used to the 9-inch circular needles, but we'll get there. So other things that I'm currently working on is my big blanket that I'll be working on forever. I haven't made that much progress since last time. So I've got my little stitch markers. So since last time I've knitted, or crocheted I guess, from here up, I've now realized that the blanket is not going to be as big as I thought it was going to be, so I have to repeat more of the patterns. This is a self-drafted pattern. Hopefully I can hold it up so you can see enough of it. It's the same top and bottom above the bicycles. It's got the bicycles there and all these different mosaic motifs, I'm almost done the brown one. I'm super, super close to it. And then I think there's a couple more geometric type things. And then I'm going to have to add more because currently it's not going to be as long as I want. I want it to be long enough for maybe a tall person or something like that. I'm keeping it for myself because this has taken so much longer than I thought. But I'm thinking about adding maybe more bicycles, like another row of bicycles and maybe another row of this or these guys or something, just until I can make it the length that I want. Because I want it to be able to cover a bed. What's the use of a blanket if it doesn't cover a bed? Currently it's a good lap blanket though, but it's a good width. I think it'll fit over a single or a twin, or just be a good couch blanket. I haven't decided yet. But if you guys have never done mosaic crochet before, I 100% recommend it. It's super easy. You just pick one color and go across and then do double crochets to kind of go down and get the different colors to kind of overlap. So it's like you do a row of white, a row of brown, a row of white, a row of brown, and you just kind of go down to cover up the stitches. So on the back side, it's just rows. I use the type of mosaic crocheting that Tina does. I can't remember her last name, but she has a really, really, really good tutorial, I guess, on YouTube about these. I think I talked about it in the last episode as well. Anyway, that's my big blanket. It's going super well. I'm trying to get through as much of my stash with this as I can. I have, like I mentioned earlier, like probably a couple hundred balls of this white yarn, which is just this Cara wool that I got at an estate sale. It literally just says 2 ounces. It doesn't tell you the length. It doesn't tell you anything else. It says natural color, genuine Bonnie knitting wool, made in Ireland. I guess it's made for Irish sweaters, which is what the lady who originally had it was making it for. Working my way through that. I've got a couple different colors of Patton's classic wool. It says it's a merino, but it's not that super buttery soft merino. And then I've got some Cascade 220 and just a bunch of other things that are all the same size to make this massive blanket that I'm going to be knitting on into the summer, which is going to be fun. Anyway, that's off to that side. The next thing that I've made a bunch of progress on is my Forestland sweater by Jennifer Steingass. Last time I showed you guys, I believe I was just at the beginning of the color work here. And I'm doing this with some lace weight alpaca that I got. I have these massive cones of it that I got from somebody on Facebook Marketplace. But you can finally see the pattern actually that's going on, which I really, really like. I've made some mistakes, I think a little bit, but that's mostly just at the join. Once you get away from like the seam, you can see the pattern properly. And I'm finally past the halfway point, which is great because I'm realizing that I don't super enjoy doing stranded color work with this yarn because I'm doing like 3 strands of lace weight together to make whatever I need to get gauge. And then I'm just using 2 different colors. And I actually went to a knit night with my friend who I hadn't seen in a long time. And I got there and I knitted for like maybe 20 minutes and then I ran out of the brown. I was so disappointed in myself. So I had to ball up a couple more of these little brown guys. I'm taking one of them and just pulling from the outside, and the other one I'm going from the outside and inside because I made little center pull balls on the end of a wooden spoon. And so that's kind of what I've been doing for those. And then I also got my ball winder. I've got a wonderful wooden ball winder that's a little finicky to use. And I made 2 massive ones of the beige. So at least I know I'm not going to run out. I'm not going to run out at Tanisha's house this time. I've got all my knitting. I'm super stoked. Anyway, those are fun. Also, a side note, I love the pattern that the ball winder makes. Like, it's just the prettiest. It's like waffle texture, like those waffle sweaters. Can't get enough of it. Anyway, that's my Forestland sweater. Like I said, I literally was down here last time, so I've done all of this stuff. I did a lot of it while I was dog sitting. And, yeah, just trying to, like, chill out. But it's not really a chill out knit. It's going to be good once I'm past the color work. But I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait to wear it. Hopefully it'll be better by next winter. Sounds good. Little side note, I'm carrying it in this little book bag that my grandma made. Back, obviously, when she was alive. This one was my sister's, but she moved to Australia, so I might have taken it. I don't know if she knows or not, but that's okay. So I've got those guys. And then, fun fact, I got an 1890s sock knitting machine that I'm getting an extra part made for because it doesn't run the way I want it to, and I found that it doesn't have these upthrow cams that all the other ones have, and whatever. I took it to a manufacturer guy, and he's helping me out with it because I wanted to get it made out of metal so it can match the rest of it. And I was overseeing if the parts were going to work properly, and I got really excited, and I offered to make him a toque. And so I've made him a Dueck toque, because it's Dueck Manufacturing. He's a local metal manufacturer here in Nanaimo, so I made him one with his last name on it. This is supposed to be his company symbol, but the way I did the decreases at the top, I mean, it's pointy as heck, and I need to fix it, but also it kind of hides the symbol, and I was kind of hoping that this gray would show up differently than the white, so it would kind of emulate his symbol a little bit more, but his symbol's the yellow on top, so I'm debating dyeing it with turmeric, maybe, or something. Either way, I'm going to have to rip back a little bit and redo the decreases, but he said it fits perfectly, which is surprising. And then I have to redo the top. I have to join this bottom bit of the, what do you call it? Tubular cast on. I do a tubular cast on and I extend it a little bit so it's like a double layer thick edge so it doesn't roll up. But I learned, I think it was Andrea Mowry has a video posted where she shows how to do a tubular cast on flat, and it makes it so much easier to remember, so I don't have to remember like, oh, this time you're purling this way and you're doing this other thing. It's always just knit and then slip with the yarn behind or in front, and you just do that a few more times, and then all of a sudden you have this wonderful cast on, and you don't have to worry about remembering like the 5 different rows that go on for like a circular cast on. And then I just kind of do something to make this seem like, but that's okay. And then I also have to fix this yarn barf situation on the inside because I was knitting this while I was hanging out with my friends. This side's fine. You can kind of actually see the Dueck on the inside. But I was going along, and then I realized that I'd made 3 rows of black before doing the middle of the E instead of 2. So I did 3, 2, and then 2, and it was not good. So I was like up here, and I had to drop all the stitches down and try and like restitch it and add little chunks of yarn in the back. And now it looks like an E, like a proper E. But I have this cluster of things that I need to weave in. I need to fix the top, and I need to do the thing. This is just made on, I use 4mm knitting needles because those are my favorite size. And I'm using Briggs & Little Country Roving, which comes in a cake. I have them stored back in there, buried somewhere. But it comes in a cake with 5 strands of pencil roving all together. And I don't want to knit with things that thick. So I took it apart and I make 2 balls of double-stranded. So I've got these like 2 strands. And then I make 1 ball with 1 strand. And then I haven't decided what to do with the 1-stranded ones, but I've got all these balls of the 2-stranded ones, and I've got a little bit of the white that I wound up so that I could do like the little arc on the top of the symbol, which I'm gonna have to do something else with, but that's for another day. It's pretty much done. Hopefully it's motivation for my knitting machine to get worked on a little bit faster. Who knows? We'll get that done, and then I'm gonna hopefully be able to make a lot of socks. So that'll be good. What else do I have to talk about? I've been null bending a lot. Well, not really a lot, but some days we go on walks with our group of occupational rehab people, and I've been taking my null bending with me and null bending on these walks. I don't have that with me because I left it at work with the Nepal tooth that I fixed earlier because they're both just work things. I'll try and have pictures of it up here. But I think I'm probably down to like maybe here on this Duke, and it's really fun. I could definitely still suck at it, but it looks like something that somebody could wear. And that's all that really matters. Of course, every time you see people with it, they're like, oh yeah, you're gonna bring your knitting with you, Stephanie? And I'm like, it's actually null bending. And they're like, whatever, you and your Viking craft. So at least they know it's from Vikings or somewhere back in there. And, you know, inadvertently educated them on fiber crafts because what else are you gonna do when you're on a walk outside? So I think that's the end of the work in progress things that I have. I have a list of things that I need to do in the future that I'm going to share with you guys as well, because I think it's pretty fun. One of them's totally not yarn related, but a couple of years ago I made a leather Romoli board for my dad. It's like a card game that involves a little bit of poker things and running through sequences and getting points for certain cards. But so far we've only been able to find these hard plastic playing boards, which my dad doesn't want because they are bulky and plastic, which is gross. And so he wanted like the flimsier plastic one that you can roll up, but nobody was selling those. We couldn't find a used one. So I went and got a bunch of vegetable tan leather, which is the like more sustainable leather. And I got it laser engraved. So I spent 20 hours working with the software to make like this leather Romoli board pattern because it needed to be in a vector format to work with the laser engraver and yada yada yada. And then I made these little poker rank cards because I don't know about you, but I suck at poker. Like, I know nothing about it. And apparently so does a lot of my dad's friends that he does games nights with. So I made these little pink poker rank cards where it just shows like the highest all the way down to the lowest on these little cards. The only problem with this is that when you have your deck of cards and you're looking at your deck of cards and looking back at this, it's hard to kind of jump between like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so we were thinking about redesigning them, getting them more laser engraved. I'm kind of going down in columns, so I have to redesign it. And I went and got the leather and I sort of redesigned it, but now he wants it a different way. So that's something I'm going to be working on. And then I'm going to be going to the Atomic Laser Co. He's a guy in Victoria who used to run Big Red Beard Combs. I think he sold that business. Either way, he still has the laser engraver. He's still like, you can go to him and use the time, and he runs the laser though because it's a really high-tech laser. It's like way better than a Glowforge, I guess. He showed me like an example, and actually if you had a magnifying glass and you looked at like this under a magnifying glass and you looked at a Glowforge piece under a magnifying glass, this was like still super crisp when you magnified it, but the Glowforge ones were kind of fuzzy. So I figured go for quality, right? So I have to remake those. That's my first thing that I have to do. The next thing that I have to do is mend this alpaca sweater that I've had for years. I love it. And when I got it, it was in really good condition. I got it at a thrift store for like $7. I was really, really impressed with it. It's an alpaquita, so it's baby alpaca. But what I've noticed is the outside of the sleeves is super like felted, which I guess you probably can't really tell too much. But the underside of the sleeves, like, you can see everything. It's super, super thin. This side you can't see anything. Like, you can stretch it out. It's just felted like crazy. It's super, super warm, super almost windproof on the outside, which is great. But the side that rubs against my side is getting super thin. And there's even a spot like right there where it's like a strand of thread basically. So I'm gonna have to do a lot of duplicate stitching is what I've decided. And because I have a bunch of this alpaca yarn, I'm going to use the same stuff that I've been using for the Forestland sweater. I've got this color, I've got the dark brown, I've got black, and I've got white. So I think I'm going to use the black because that's what I've used to patch a couple other holes in this, because I have cats. He's lovely, he loves kneading me, but you know, sometimes he ruins things. So I've got a couple little patches on this one. I think this is the bigger one. Like I said, just mending things, gotta make it last forever. And I got another little patch there. So I figured I'll go with that, and I'll just have these like massive black patches on the inside so that I can keep wearing the sweater, because as soon as I saw that it was almost about to break, I haven't touched it since. Terrified. I love this sweater. I want it to work in the future, so I have to fix it. And that's going to be a lot of duplicate stitching. So I'm going to get really good at that, which is going to be a good bonus of that. The next thing I'm working on is hopefully getting my knitting machine back so I can learn how to make socks on a hand crank sock machine. I'm super excited about it. It'll help me get through a bunch of my yarn, and I may have also got a bit more yarn, but that's okay. Then, I'm not sure if you guys have all seen, but there's these little frogs that are all over Instagram right now, and like, I can't remember who makes them, but they're super, super cute. They're these little frog stuffies, and I still have some green yarn left. This is it's from Alberta. I can't remember what it is, but I got a bunch of it and made a shawl and made one of my coworkers like toucan mittens with it. And I want to make a frog at some point. But I also have a lot more things on my plate right now with the 2 new jobs and hopefully getting the sock knitting machine back. So we'll see where that goes. So I'm doing that. I'm going to work on my sweater, the sock knitting machine, leather poker cards. I think that's all the things that I have planned for the near future. We'll see how that goes. Obviously still going to work on my sweater and my blanket, but whatever, it's alright. And I actually have acquisitions. I don't normally do this because I normally don't buy extra stuff, but it was my birthday in March, and I was told that I was getting a birthday present whether I liked it or not. So I may have gotten the Chaigu little mini set. It's so cute. I didn't know, because when I first started using the interchangeable needles, nobody had sock knitting interchangeable needles because nobody could manufacture them, I guess. Or maybe I just didn't look in the right places. But Chaigu has a red lace set. And they're little mini shorties, and it comes with, oh my goodness, this is so wonderful. So it's got these little tiny, tiny cables, but it's that same like cable coated as their other cables, which I've never experienced before, and they don't kink, and it's amazing. They don't have any memory because it's just a metal cable. So that's super, super cool. And it comes in this cute little bag. I think what else is in here? It comes with, I mean, a tiny gauge tool, but whatever. It's got everything laser engraved. It's got these little tiny, tiny stitch markers. Sorry, pardon the glare. And these little tiny, tiny keys, these little tiny, tiny stoppers. Like, everything is so small. And there's actually, like, in the bottom, I guess, I can probably sort of single it out. There's the little tiny, tiny cable connectors. I'm sorry, you can't see them very well. But tiny, tiny, tiny. And then they all interchange into these little tiny, tiny needles. So it goes from 2 millimeters to 3.25 millimeters. It's got 2-inch long segments, or 3-inch long, I guess, or something. I'm super bad with lengths of things. Either way, they're super, super good, and they've got like the tiniest little threading on the end, and it goes into the tiniest little cables, just like every other interchangeable needle. And that's what I've been knitting on for my pinky sock. So it's just this little tiny, tiny circle. And look at how small it is. Like, you can't even be mad at that. It's definitely a learning experience, and I'm using the 2 short needles. I understand that most people use one shorter and one longer, and that's what the fixed ones are like. But I figured I would just do the 2 smaller ones and see how it went, and it seems to be going pretty good. So that's been really fun. They're metal, they're super sturdy, which is wonderful, and you probably won't be able to tell, but it's like, no, you definitely won't be able to tell, but that's okay. It's got like the writing on it, so I hope that doesn't wear off, and that'll tell you the size. And of course the cable and the knitting needle both have a little eyelet in it, so you can put those tightening keys in it and tighten it just a tiny, tiny bit. It does say to be quite fragile with them because the components are so small, which is like totally understandable because they're so little. But this is my new walking project. It's pretty fun. I'm using flagging tape as stitch markers because I started on the cuff at home, and then by the time we got out to the hike, I was on the cuff, and I didn't bring any stitch markers. So mistakes were made. But that's okay. So I got that, and then I haven't actually bought much yarn ever really in the last few years because I had so much from all these old estate sales and stuff like that. But I was down in Victoria visiting my mom for my birthday, and there was this wonderful lady that was selling yarn on Facebook Marketplace. I didn't go on to look for that, but you know, Facebook just knows me too well, and I may have gotten an entire bag of yarn. So the last few years I've only bought 2 skeins, and one of them was to finish the toucan mittens that I made for a coworker because he wanted more gray, and the other one was another toque for another coworker who wanted a lot of green, and I didn't have green. So I think those were justified purchases, but considering I'm getting my sock machine back at some point, I kind of went overboard and I have this whole bag, but I think I might make an extra video just talking about all of this yarn because it's still currently in like plastic bags and whatnot to prevent moths from getting at it. And I kind of also don't want to admit the fact that I may have bought all of this yarn. But it's all good quality stuff. I'm going to make socks with it. I'm going to give it to my friends, and it's going to be great. So it's all going to go to good use, and it's all like natural fibers. I think most of it's really woolly wool. There's some Icelandic wool in there. There's some British breeds wool in there. There's also a little bit of superwash, but I think that'll be okay. I'll figure out something to do with that. And I also got like this alpaca, which like, unfortunately it's too big. I can't use it on the sweater. It's kind of a similar color, but it's a lot of alpaca. And everything was for a super good price, so it justified it. And now my stash is bigger, and now I have to knit more, which is not really much of a problem. Anyway, that's all I really have to share. I've got all this stuff. Thanks for spending some time with me. I'm sorry if I got too excited and talked a little bit too fast or said too much. I'm still learning, and it's a little bit late, and it's been a crazy weekend. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great time. Enjoy your knitting, and I'll continue watching everybody else's videos like as we always do, and I will see you guys in the future. Bye! Whoop! It's like the most slow motion tug of war ever. Is that it? She's not even. She's still smiling. What's up, Zola? Oh, game over. We're done. So fluffy. What you doing there, Zola?